Is cremation a sin? The Bible's shocking answer. Burial practices in the Bible. The Bible does not explicitly endorse or prohibit cremation. Here's a breakdown of the relevant points. In biblical times, burial was the most common practice among Jews and early Christians. Numerous accounts in both the Old and New Testaments describe burial, suggesting it was the norm. For example, Genesis 23 describes Abraham's purchase of a burial site for Sarah, and Acts 8:2 mentions the burial of Stephen. There are no direct commandments against cremation in the Bible. The few instances where fire and bodies are associated, in a negative context, like the burning of Achan and his family in Joshua 7:25, are more about punishment than cremation as a funeral rite. Some interpret the Christian belief in bodily resurrection at the end times as an indirect argument for burial, suggesting that the body should be preserved in some form. However, this is more of an inference since the Bible also describes God as capable of resurrecting from ashes or dust. Ezekiel 37:1-14, the vision of the dry bones. In the time of the Bible, cremation was more associated with pagan practices, or punishment rather than a standard burial method for the faithful. However, cultural practices have evolved, and cremation today does not carry the same connotations it might have had in biblical times. Today, many Christian denominations have no objection to cremation. The Catholic Church, for instance, allowed cremation with certain stipulations starting in 1963. The key is that the practice does not reflect a denial of faith in the resurrection of the body. While there's no direct commentary on cremation, verses like 1 Corinthians 15:35-44 discuss the resurrection of the body, focusing more on the transformation rather than the method of body disposal after death. Burial or cremation. The main environmental risk associated with burial in cemeteries is the contamination of soil and groundwater by the decomposing organic matter of the human body, known as necroleachate. Decomposing microorganisms break down body tissues and release a liquid rich in nutrients, microorganisms, and contaminants. Because it has a high pathogenic load, necroleachate can cause pollution and diseases such as typhoid and paratyphoid fever, diarrhea, and infection by the hepatitis A virus. Among the changes in the human body after death, we can mention autolysis, a self-destruction activity in which enzymes decompose cells and tissues of the human body. There is also putrefaction, the name given to the decomposition of the body by the action of worms, insects, and microorganisms. The body inside the coffin begins to decompose within a year, but it can take up to a decade to decompose completely. The decomposition process is marked by swelling, discoloration, liquefaction, and skeletonization. Therefore, 30 days after death, an intense volume of gases begins to form inside the body. Soon after, the body bursts and releases all the internal liquids. On the other hand, cremation, despite consuming petroleum derivatives, the smoke emitted during incineration is not harmful to the environment. It also does not contaminate the soil or the groundwater. It offers itself as a more eco-friendly option. Some families prefer to preserve the ashes of their ancestors in specialized cineraries, such as the Kinkakuji Temple in Kyoto, Japan. Exhumation of bodies. The exhumation of bodies is a procedure that, although it may be painful for many, is necessary in many situations. For example, the release of the tomb so that other family members can use it when necessary. The coffin is exhumed in the presence of family members. The bones are removed from the grave and placed in smaller urns, drawers, or cremated. The remains of the coffin and clothes are sent to a location that complies with local health regulations. The length of time a body remains buried in a cemetery varies according to each country's legislation. Normally, the legal period for the body to remain in the grave is 3 years for natural deaths and 6 years for deaths from infectious diseases. One of the advantages of opting for cremation is that there will be no need for exhumation, regardless of your religion. What will you prefer when you die? Cremation or burial? Let us know your choice in the comments. Now, let's find out what burial methods the main religions prefer. What are the burial practices of the Catholic Church? The Catholic Church has a long history of burial practices that reflect their faith in the resurrection of the body. Here are some key aspects. Burial is the preferred method. While cremation is permitted under certain conditions, burial is still the preferred method in the Catholic Church. Funeral Mass. The central event is the funeral Mass, a liturgical celebration that commemorates the life of the deceased and their hope of eternal life. Vigil Service. A prayer service often takes place before the funeral Mass, offering comfort and support to the bereaved. Committal Service. A final blessing and prayers are offered at the graveside or at the place where the cremated remains are interred. Respect for the body. The Catholic Church emphasizes the dignity of the human body and encourages respectful treatment of the deceased. These are some of the general principles of Catholic burial practices. Specific customs and traditions may vary among different regions and cultures. What are the burial practices of the Orthodox Church? The Orthodox Church has a strong tradition of burial, viewing it as a sacred act and a reflection of their faith in the resurrection of the body. Here are some key aspects of Orthodox burial practices. Burial is the norm. Cremation is generally not permitted in Orthodox tradition. Preparation of the body. The body is washed and dressed in simple, respectful attire. Often a white garment is used to symbolize baptism and purity. Funeral services. Orthodox funerals involve a series of prayers, hymns, and readings from the Bible. The service may include a vigil, a procession to the church, and a final blessing. At the graveside, open casket. Traditionally, the casket remains open during the funeral service, allowing mourners to pay their respects. Last kiss. A significant part of the service is the last kiss, where mourners approach the casket to offer a final farewell. Graveside service. At the cemetery, a priest conducts a brief service, offering prayers for the deceased and their eternal rest. These are some of the general principles of Orthodox burial practices. Specific customs and traditions may vary slightly among different Orthodox jurisdictions. What are the burial practices of the Protestant Church? Protestantism is a diverse Christian tradition with many denominations, each with its nuances in burial practices. However, some general characteristics include focus on the individual. Protestant funerals often emphasize the unique life and faith of the deceased, with personal testimonies and remembrances playing a significant role. Acceptance of cremation. Cremation is widely accepted within most Protestant denominations with no theological objections. Emphasis on hope and resurrection. Protestant funerals often center on the hope of resurrection and eternal life, offering comfort and reassurance to the bereaved. Varied service styles. Funeral services can range from traditional church services with hymns and prayers to more informal gatherings with personal tributes and shared memories. It's important to note that these are general observations. Specific practices can vary significantly among different Protestant denominations and even within individual congregations. What are the burial practices of Spiritism? Allan Kardec. Spiritists accept cremation as long as 72 hours pass between death and the ritual. This period is considered necessary for the spirit to completely detach itself from the body. Because of this, cremation can occur without major problems, since the body is only matter, but the spirit is immortal. Cremation. Cremation is a way of returning the physical body to nature. The spirit is the most important element, and religion respects the individual choices of each person. Cremation is an important hygienic process for societies. Burial. The closed coffin serves as a mark of respect and consideration. Silence and tranquility are essential to allow the spirit to detach itself from the material plane. What is important are prayers, sincere remembrance, love, and prayer. Spiritist view on death. The spirit continues to live after death. That is, death only affects the body. The spirit will continue its journey based on its accomplishments on earth. What happens to the spirit at the wake? According to Spiritism, the spirit of the deceased attends the wake, which is a time to help the disembodied spirit so that it can continue its journey. Silence and tranquility are essential for the spirit to detach itself from the material plane. How is the spirit helped at the wake? Through positive thoughts, prayers, through positive vibrations, through an environment of serenity and reflection. How can the family help? Maintain balance. Pray so that the soul understands what is happening. Avoid pressuring the deceased with memories and emotions that could disturb him, her. Pray for her benefit. How is the body treated? The closed coffin serves as a mark of respect and consideration. The body can be buried or cremated depending on the family's choice. What happens to the spirit after death? The spirit will continue its trajectory based on its accomplishments on earth. What are the burial practices of the Buddhists? Buddhist burial practices vary depending on the specific tradition and region, but some common themes include cremation as the norm. Cremation is generally the preferred method in most Buddhist traditions. It is seen as a way to release the deceased from their physical form and facilitate the transition to the next life. Emphasis on spiritual liberation. The focus of Buddhist funeral rites is often on helping the deceased achieve spiritual liberation and a peaceful rebirth. Chanting and prayers, chanting of sutras, Buddhist scriptures, and prayers are important parts of the funeral service, intended to guide the deceased spirit and offer comfort to the bereaved. Monastic involvement. Monks or other religious leaders often play a significant role in the funeral service, leading chants, offering guidance, and providing spiritual support, respectful treatment of the deceased. The body is treated with respect and dignity throughout the process. It's important to remember that these are general observations. Specific practices can vary significantly among different Buddhist traditions and even within individual communities. What are the burial practices of Hinduism? In Hinduism, cremation is the most common and preferred method of body disposal. It is believed that cremation helps release the soul from the physical body and facilitates its journey to the next life. Here's a summary of Hindu burial practices. Cremation. The deceased is typically cremated on a funeral pyre. The eldest son or a close male relative usually lights the pyre. River immersion. The ashes are often immersed in a sacred river, such as the Ganges, believed to purify the soul. Rituals and chants. The cremation process is accompanied by prayers, chants, and rituals conducted by a Hindu priest. Mourning period. A mourning period follows the cremation, during which family members observe certain rituals and customs. These are some of the general principles of Hindu burial practices. Specific customs and traditions may vary among different regions and communities. What are the burial practices of Judaism? In Judaism, burial is the primary method of body disposal, reflecting the Jewish belief in the sanctity of the human body and the importance of returning it to the earth. Here's a summary of Jewish burial practices. Ritual washing. The body is ritually washed, tahara, by individuals of the same gender as the deceased, following specific procedures outlined in Jewish law. Shrouding. The washed body is then shrouded in a simple white cloth, takrikim. Funeral service. A simple funeral service, levaya, is conducted often at the graveside with prayers and readings from the Torah. Burial. The body is buried directly in the ground, without a casket, in a designated Jewish cemetery. Mourning period. A mourning period, Shiva, follows the burial, during which family members observe specific customs, such as sitting Shiva at home and refraining from certain activities. These are some of the general principles of Jewish burial practices. Specific customs and traditions may vary among different Jewish communities and denominations. What are the burial practices of Islam? In Islam, burial is the preferred and most common method of body disposal. Cremation is strictly prohibited. Here's a summary of Islamic burial practices. Prompt burial. Burial is typically performed as soon as possible after death, often within 24 hours. Ritual washing. The body is ritually washed, ghusl, by individuals of the same gender as the deceased. Shrouding. The washed body is then shrouded in a simple white cloth, kafan. Funeral prayer. A special prayer, janazah, is performed by the Muslim community, led by an imam. Burial. The body is buried directly in the ground facing the Kaaba in Mecca, without a casket. These practices reflect the Islamic belief in the sanctity of the human body and the importance of respecting the deceased.
If you enjoy this video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel, where we continue to explore the rich narratives of the Bible and their relevance to our lives today. Regardless of your religion, what will you prefer? When you die? Cremation or burial? Let us know your choice in the comments. And don't forget to turn on the notification bell so that you won't miss our next deep dive into biblical narratives and their timeless truths. Thanks for watching. And remember, the Bible was right.